Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the rules around your Social Security benefits just shifted, without much warning, without a clear headline splashed across the evening news, and without anyone calling to explain how it impacts your monthly check. That's exactly the situation millions of Americans are facing right now because starting in September, a brand new Social Security rule has gone into effect. And if you don't understand it, you could either miss out on money you've earned, or worse, make a mistake that delays or reduces the benefits you depend on. The truth is, Social Security, SSI, and SSA guidelines are constantly evolving, but this change is different. Why? Because it touches directly on eligibility, reporting, and the way payments are processed. And here's the part that most folks don't realize. These rules don't just apply in some far-off future. They apply right now, this month, to checks that seniors across the United States are counting on to pay their bills, cover groceries, and keep the lights on. So what exactly is happening? The new rule deals with how certain income and resources are calculated, how overpayments are handled, and how quickly changes in your situation must be reported to avoid penalties. That may sound complicated, but don't worry, we're breaking it down in plain, everyday language so you know exactly what it means for you. This isn't about politics, speculation, or rumors. This is about real, concrete changes in the Social Security system that affect retirees, people with disabilities, and anyone receiving SSI or SSA benefits. If you're in the United States and you rely on these programs to stay afloat each month, then understanding this update is not optional, it's essential. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you step by step through what's changed, how it might affect your benefits, and most importantly, what action you need to take right now to protect your income and make sure you're not leaving a single dollar on the table. Now, let's break this down together, because I know the first thing you're probably wondering is, why do these Social Security rules keep changing, and why do they always seem to happen quietly, almost in the background? The truth is, the Social Security Administration makes adjustments all the time, sometimes because of inflation, sometimes because of new legislation, and other times because of budget pressures or updated reporting requirements. These changes are not meant to confuse people, but the way they're rolled out often leaves millions of Americans scratching their heads, wondering what's really happening. And here's the reality, if you don't stay informed, you can find yourself facing surprises, and that's the last thing anyone needs when they're relying on their monthly check just to get by. This September's rule is important because it affects the way the SSA looks at your situation when deciding how much you qualify for. Now, for most retirees who receive Social Security retirement benefits, the monthly check is based on your lifetime earnings. But when it comes to SSI, which is supplemental security income, or even certain Social Security benefits tied to disability, the rules are a little different. Those programs look at your current income, your resources, and sometimes even your living arrangements to decide what you should be receiving. The September update changes how certain pieces of that puzzle are calculated, which can either work in your favor or against you, depending on your circumstances. Here's an example. Let's say you're receiving SSI because your income is limited and you've been relying on that monthly benefit to help cover your rent and daily expenses. Under the new rule, some forms of income or assistance that previously weren't counted could now be included when the SSA decides how much you're eligible for. That means, in plain language, that if you receive a little extra help, maybe from a family member, maybe from a small side income, it could reduce the size of your SSI check. On the other hand, in certain cases, the SSA is also changing how they treat overpayments, which has been a huge source of stress for seniors across the country. For years, many people have been blindsided by letters claiming they were overpaid and now owe thousands back to the government. With this new rule, the process for how those overpayments are reviewed and collected is being adjusted, with the promise of being more fair and more reasonable. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of policy talk, but let me bring this down to what it really means for you. If you're sitting at home in Ohio, Florida, Texas, or anywhere else in the United States, and you're receiving benefits, the most important thing you can do right now is make sure you understand how any extra income, gifts, or changes in your living situation could impact your benefits under this new rule. Maybe your daughter helps pay for your groceries each month, or maybe you recently started getting a small pension from a job you held years ago. Those details matter now more than ever, and they could be the difference between getting your full SSI check or seeing it reduced in the months ahead. Another big part of this change has to do with timing. The SSA is tightening the window for reporting changes in your financial or personal situation. In the past, some folks would delay reporting a change, not out of dishonesty, but simply because they didn't know it had to be reported so quickly. Maybe you moved in with a relative, maybe you sold a car, maybe you started getting a little more income than before. Under the new rule, these kinds of changes need to be reported faster, otherwise the SSA could label your payment as an overpayment and demand money back. And let's be honest, nobody wants to deal with the stress of those repayment letters. It's frustrating, it's intimidating, and it can take months or even years to resolve. That's why understanding the timeline and keeping your information updated is more critical this September than ever before. Now, let's talk about retirees who are strictly on Social Security retirement benefits. Because you might be thinking, does any of this apply to me? The good news is, for most retirees, your monthly check based on your lifetime earnings isn't going to suddenly vanish or shrink overnight. But don't tune out just yet, because the SSA changes in September also have ripple effects. One of those ripples has to do with cost of living adjustments, also known as COLA. Every year, the SSA calculates whether to increase benefits based on inflation. And this year, with inflation still putting pressure on seniors trying to afford basics like food and utilities, the conversation around COLA is more important than ever. While the September rule isn't directly about COLA, the way benefits are calculated and reported now could influence what you see when the new adjustment is announced later this year. And there's another layer to this that's worth paying attention to. Many seniors don't just rely on Social Security alone. They might also receive Medicaid, food assistance, or veterans benefits. The SSA rule changes in September can sometimes have a domino effect, meaning if your Social Security or SSI check changes, it could affect your eligibility for other programs as well. This is why it's so important to look at the big picture and not just focus on the one check you see deposited into your bank account each month. If you suddenly see a reduction in your SSI benefit, it might push you into a different category for Medicaid or reduce the amount of other assistance you qualify for. And the sad part is, many seniors don't realize this until it's too late. That's why knowledge is power here. The SSA isn't going to send someone to sit down at your kitchen table and explain exactly how the September rule affects your unique situation. It's up to us to dig into the information, translate the policy language into everyday English, and then make sure you have the tools to protect your benefits. And I want to stress this again, protecting your benefits doesn't mean doing anything complicated or hiring expensive help. It often comes down to simply understanding what needs to be reported, when it needs to be reported, and what you should watch out for in your monthly statements. Now let me pause here for a moment, because I know some of you might be feeling overwhelmed by all this. The words new rule or reporting requirement can make anyone's head spin, especially when you're just trying to enjoy retirement or manage your health. But here's the encouraging part, you don't have to master every technical detail. What you do need is awareness, and that's exactly why we're having this conversation today. Think of it like this, if you knew the traffic light at the corner was suddenly going to change patterns, wouldn't you want a heads up before driving through it? That's exactly what this September rule is. It's a change in the pattern, and I want you to be prepared so you can move forward without hitting any unnecessary bumps. Another thing I want to highlight is how these changes tie back to the broader conversation about Social Security's future. Every year, there are headlines about the trust fund running low, about possible cuts down the road, about Congress debating what to do. While those big picture debates continue, the rules we're seeing in September are the smaller, more immediate steps that directly affect people today. So, while the politicians argue about what's going to happen 10 or 20 years from now, these rule changes are what's happening this month, and they matter just as much, if not more, for your daily life. Let's also touch on something that often gets overlooked, communication with the SSA. I know many of you have had the frustrating experience of trying to call their office, sitting on hold for an hour, only to hang up without getting the answer you needed. The truth is, the system is overloaded, and that makes it even more important to get information right the first time. Under the new September rule, if you're unsure about whether something counts as income or needs to be reported, the best approach is to document it, call your local SSA office, and keep a record of the conversation. It may not be convenient, but it's the safest way to protect yourself. I also want to address something that comes up all the time: fear of losing benefits. A lot of people hear about rule changes and immediately panic, thinking their checks are going to stop or be cut dramatically. In most cases, that's not what's happening. The September rule isn't designed to strip people of their benefits. It's designed to tighten up the system, to make reporting more accurate, and to reduce errors that have cost both the government and beneficiaries a lot of stress over the years. That said, if you don't pay attention, small mistakes could snowball into big headaches. And that's the part we want to avoid. So here's where we are. Starting in September, the SSA expects more timely and accurate reporting of income and resources, and they're adjusting the way overpayments are handled. For some people, this will mean little to no change. For others, especially those receiving SSI, it could mean adjustments to the monthly benefit amount. And for everyone, it means one thing for certain: you've got to stay alert, informed, and ready to respond.